And welcome to the Talking Tuesday edition of Palmetto Sports Daily. Rick Henry here in Columbia, joined today by Kevin Bilodeau in Charleston and Carmine Jamay in Greenville. Well, fellas, happy rivalry week. We've got the big one coming up Saturday. South Carolina will host Clemson at high noon as the two rivals get together one more time. And one of the oddities in this rivalry, South Carolina hasn't won at home since 2013, but they've won the last two games at Clemson. So a little bit later, we'll give our predictions on who we think will come out on top. And we've got some nice graphics that producer Nick has put together. Producer Nick, can you put those up on the screen for us? Clemson leads the overall rivalry with 73 wins, 44 losses, and there have been 4 ties the last 5 meetings. Well, the Tigers are on top 3-2, and there's the mention down there at the bottom about the 4 ties in the rivalry's history. So, fellas, quickly, I'm going to toss it to you and give a little synopsis or your thoughts about how you think Saturday will come together. Carmine?
Well, it's interesting because Coach Dabo Swinney in his press conference was talking about somebody brought up that the Gamecocks have won 2 out of the last 3, and then he said, yeah, but Clemson's won 8 out of the last 10, depending on what time frame you look at this on. But as far as 3 of the last 4 have come down extremely exciting. And really the last 3 that I've witnessed have been incredible. I really hope we see more offense like we saw 3 games ago. And then the last one was just so heartbreaking for Clemson with Cade Klubnik throwing that interception with just a few seconds left, well within field goal range for the game-tying field goal. And then you see Dabo and Coach Beamer. I really like the camaraderie between the 2 coaches in this rivalry, and I know that extends even further back than them. But as far as this year, Rick, to your question, it's so unpredictable because of the ACC competition versus the SEC competition, and you've seen the Gamecocks knocking at the door against some of these top 10, even top 5 opponents with Alabama and Texas A&M being right there in the fourth quarter. So they've definitely played a much more difficult schedule. Clemson has not played as difficult of a schedule, but with more wins and already being bowl eligible. If I'm Clemson, and I'm already bowl eligible, really, Kevin, the Gamecocks have so much more to play for, even though they're not going to make a bowl game. This is like their entire season that they can actually, knock off Clemson. So as far as motivation, I see that going in the Gamecocks' favor. And I don't know. I mean, I think Clemson's more talented, but the Gamecocks have a lot more motivation. So I think it's really a pick 'em at this point.
Well, Carmine, I would disagree with you on the motivation factor. I think both these teams are going to be motivated going in because you're right. Even though Clemson does have their postseason set, they are going to a bowl game. South Carolina is not. This season hasn't been good for either of these teams so far. The only thing that can really salvage this season is winning the Palmetto Bowl and beating your rival. Nobody's going to care if Clemson goes to the Pinstripe Bowl or the Fenway Bowl up in Boston and they beat some barely other 500 team. Nobody's going to care about that. But if you get a win over South Carolina, that makes a huge difference going into the offseason. And the same thing for the Gamecocks in Columbia. If they can win over Clemson at home, break that streak of the Tigers winning at Williams-Brice, despite the fact that this has been a disappointing season, that gives them some momentum going into the offseason. I am a little bit surprised South Carolina is the favorite going into this one. 2.5 points at the last time I saw. It seems like that's kind of a nod towards, like Carmine was saying, a tougher schedule and more tough opponents for South Carolina over the course of the year, and maybe that's helped build them up and get them ready for an ACC team in Clemson. I'm with Carmine. I think Clemson is the more talented team. I kind of like Clemson's chances a little bit more to at least cover the spread. But, Rick, South Carolina is the favorite going into this one.
Yeah, and I think both teams have a lot to play for. You want to win the state championship. I think that's on the list of the goals for both teams. But also you want that momentum and you want to impress recruits, high school recruits and guys who are looking to come in through the portal. And you're recruiting your own players. You want to leave them with a good feeling about how the season ended. Surely it was disappointing, But if for the Gamecocks, if they can win their last two and give them some momentum going into 2026, that may encourage some guys, hey, okay, we're moving in the right direction. Carmine?
Yeah, definitely agree with both of you guys. The motivation extremely high, and great point, Kevin, to finish on a high note for both of these teams with disappointing seasons. Clemson, I mean, it sounds almost crazy to say that Clemson was the 4th-ranked team in the country coming into this season, and the Gamecocks were 13th ranked, and now they're not even close to being ranked and hardly scratching and clawing to make a bowl game. But also another good point that was brought up was if Clemson loses this game, first of all, it'd be the first time in 6 years that the home team will have won the Palmetto Bowl. But also, it'll make this senior class 1-3 against South Carolina. That's not something that Cade Klubnik or any of the other seniors on Clemson want. But there were some extracurriculars after it wasn't quite to the level of 2004 with that major brawl. But last season, some pushing and shoving on the field. Death Valley when the attempted flag planting. You see it right here, some scuffling. Thankfully, nothing too crazy came of it. But here's head coach Dabo Swinney for Clemson talking about keeping things classy in the celebration. And apparently, according to him, Shane Beamer agrees.
Fine, celebrate with your fans and all that stuff, but disrespecting the logo, you know, things like that. Like we all should be better in that regard. And I just don't think it's bad things come from that. We almost had a fight last year that was nasty, and you know, we don't need that. And I've been a part of that. I mean, 04 was 04. I mean, that was a bad scene. And compete your butt off, dislike each other, whatever. But you know, we need to win with class and lose with class. You know, the people in the arena. Now, I can't control, you know, all the stuff outside of the arena and all that, but I think the people in the arena, we have to, you know, compete and I think respect the game and the history of this game better. And that's both sides. That's not just them or us. It's both sides. And you know, it was a nasty scene last year. Shane and I talked about that and both agreed on it, and do everything I can if we're fortunate to win the game to make sure that you know, we don't have anything like that.
So good to hear that from Coach Swinney, because as you saw in that video, which I was taking, and I don't know if you guys get this, I mean, you know, liquid courage when you have a few libations, but there's also camera courage where you're in there getting the shot and you don't think about your safety. And I was getting pushed around and I'm like, oh, I got to keep this camera steady. Meanwhile, there's a scuffle breaking out and Tracy Swinney, Dabo's brother's escorting him out of the, you know, scrum of everybody. So Kevin, although, you know, you see the rivalry juice and everything that happens there. Glad to hear that, you know, trying to get away from everything happening on the field after the game.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. You know, we shouldn't have these kind of, you know, scuffles that we had after last year. But I put that more on the losing team. You know, if you're South Carolina and you go into Clemson, I got no problem if you want to plant your flag at midfield. It's the same thing we saw in the Michigan-Ohio State game last year where, you know, Ohio State's players were really upset when Michigan wanted to plant their flag. If you don't like that, don't let them beat you. Don't let them come into your house and whoop you around and hand you a loss. That is on the losing team to take it after not being able to win the game, Rick.
Mm.
Yeah, but I've seen these situations arise up at Clemson where they have the tradition of letting the fans on the field. I'll give you an example. After one Carolina-Clemson game, SLED actually came here to the station to look at our raw footage because there was an incident after the field, and they were trying to get evidence as to what really happened. So, yeah, the fans have to, hey, they have to mind their manners as well. Okay, now we talked to Shane Beamer today, and one of the topics, of course, we expected this game at the beginning of the season to be a game that had playoff implications. Both teams in the running to make that team of 12. Of course, that's not what we have. Here's Shane Beamer on that disappointment.
It was pretty special last year, Rick, that everybody in the country was talking about this game, and everybody was talking about this game after the game too. And that's what we want. It's this rivalry doesn't take a back seat to any rivalry in the country. And like I said, I've been a part of some of the best ones out there. This one's special and heated and competitive and special 365 days a year. And it's up to us, both programs, to continue to get back to where we were last season. So when this game is played each weekend, everybody in the country is talking about it because of how great the rivalry is, but also what is riding on the game from a postseason implication standpoint.
Okay, yeah, that soundbite dealt more with raising the level of this rivalry to the other top rivalries around the country, like Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, and Auburn. And one way to do it is for teams to go into the rivalry game with playoff implications, and that's what you had last year. Didn't have it this year, but Shane says he expects both teams to be in that position next year.
Yeah, and I'm interested to hear because, like you said, Kevin, I mean, great motivation for these teams to get a win in the Palmetto Bowl, roll that into momentum for next season. What about Coach Beamer? I mean, I think he really needs this game as far as getting that contract extension last year. I think it was for 6 years, making $8 million a year. What's your how much stake do you put in this for Coach Beamer as far as like job security? Because with this season of a 1-7 conference record, I'm wishing the best for him. But how much do you think this rides on the Palmetto Bowl result this year, Kevin?
I don't think his job status is on the line in this game, if that's what we're asking. But I do think a win severely turns down the temperature going into the offseason and going into the start of next season. Now, if you lose this game, I think he's got maybe the hottest seat of any coach in a Power 4 conference going into next season. So, not necessarily a lot on the line directly from this game, directly after this game that's going to be decided. But I think it's going to play a big part in what is going to carry over into next year and how people are going to perceive him and how hot that seat's going to be, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, if you're talking about Shane and his job security, you want to be competitive on Saturday. You don't want to get blown out. If you get blown out, then that definitely turns the heat up a lot more. If you lose a tightly contested game, I think the temperature remains where it is. But win or lose, he's got to make some changes next year. All right, that's going to do it for this first segment of Palmetto Sports Daily. We're going to take our first time out, and we'll be back with more football talk.
Welcome back into the Palmetto Bowl edition of Palmetto Sports Daily. And even though this Carolina clash has a lot of seriousness in it and, potential rolling over that momentum into next season and hot seat and all those kind of things, there's also some comic relief that we got today in Dabo Swinney's press conference where he was asked, what's the difference between winning 6 or 7 games this season? Right now they have 6. If they beat the Gamecocks, they win 7. And does that change where they get positioned in bowl games? Here's the answer that Dabo gave.
In terms of bowl placement and how this season will be assessed at the end of the year, what is the difference between finishing with 6 versus 7?
I have no idea. It just means 6, 7. Is that what we got all that stuff? Is that a setup? Am I supposed to just jump in on that? Yeah, I'm in the know. I got 126, 17 to 23-year-olds. So, is that a setup question? I don't even know what that means, by the way. I have no idea. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea. You can ask all the people. I just win the game. We're thankful that we punched the ticket to the bowl.
So we heard what I guess some people have been waiting for, which is anybody of prominence to talk about this crazy trend 6-7, where it really doesn't mean anything, but everybody's saying it and the kids love it, and I guess even the 20-year-olds love it on Dabo's team that he mentioned. But Rick, here's my explanation since you were asking in the break. I heard this from a youngster at the Swamp Rabbits school day hockey game that we broadcast. He said the explanation is God created the earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh. So that's the best explanation I've heard so far.
And I think this is a trend that we need to put to rest immediately.
Why, Rick? What's wrong with the trend? First it's Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, you're out on that, and now the next biggest thing, 6-7, and you're not in favor.
Yeah, things that mean absolutely nothing to me and don't improve the quality of my life. They do irritate me, so I'm going to put it behind me right now. I'm going to talk about what Shane Beamer's had to say about these disappointing seasons. Now, when the season started, Clemson ranked 4th in the nation, South Carolina 13th. They eventually made their way up to 10th. And looking at this game, we thought, oh, man, this is going to be one of the best games nationally on that day. Carolina-Clemson jockeying for spots in the playoff. Instead, they've been out of the top 25 for such a long time. And now this team only means a whole lot to the fans of South Carolina and Clemson, the players, the coaches. Here's what Shane had to say about that disappointment.
Neither team is where they want to be right now. At the beginning of the season, I think both teams and most people on the outside expected this game to be played this weekend with playoff implications, just like it was last year. And I'm 100% convinced that this year is a little bit of an outlier and a bump in the road, but that next season and then every year from here on out, this game will be played in November on Thanksgiving weekend with playoff implications. It didn't happen this year, and I know both teams feel like they're extremely close to where they want to get back to and where we were last year at this time, where this game we were going into it and we thought the winner was going to be in the college football playoff. And this season, that's not what the implications of this game are. Still really, really meaningful and still really, really, really special.
Okay, so there's Shane Beamer. He said next year both of these teams will be in the running for a playoff berth. Kevin, you agree?
No, I don't think so. But a couple of things that did catch my ear from that was that Beamer saying that this game is going to be played Thanksgiving weekend or the days after Thanksgiving. He didn't say the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So that's something we've talked about before, is that a Friday for this Clemson-Carolina game looks like it's going to be somewhere in the near future, probably a couple years from now. The other thing is going back to Dabo and 6-7. My favorite part is Dabo basically pulling the Dr. Evil from Austin Powers, being, I'm cool, I'm hip, I know what these lingos are. So that was my favorite part from this whole block. So that's all I've got.
All right, that's going to do it for this segment of Palmetto Sports Daily. And hopefully we won't have any more talk about that thing I don't like. All right, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. As we reach the end of the regular season for Clemson and South Carolina, let's take a look back at how both teams got here. And as we mentioned, nobody really expected this game to be what it is coming up this Saturday, with Clemson only at 6 wins, South Carolina only at 4 wins coming into this year's Palmetto Bowl. But let's start off with Clemson, I should say. Of course, they had that huge top 5 matchup to kick off the season against LSU that everyone really kind of thought was going to determine which team was going to be in the playoff going forward. LSU comes out on top of that with a 17-10 victory. You know, as bad as that loss was for Clemson, really didn't do much for LSU either. They're the one that fired their coach a few weeks ago, and they're in search of a new coach. Clemson followed that up with a win over Troy, losses to Georgia Tech and Syracuse, back-to-back wins against the very tough competition of North Carolina and Boston College, followed by back-to-back losses. There was no need for a chortle there, Carmine. That's tough competition right there. SMU and Duke, back-to-back losses, then back-to-back wins against Florida State and Louisville, followed by a win last week against Furman. So that gives us Clemson with their record going into this one at 6-4 and 4, or 6-5, I should say, and 4-4 in the ACC. Rick?
Yeah, well, looking back at Clemson's season there, and you saw the early warning signs. What really became evident to me the Georgia Tech game, the Syracuse game, where those teams were the more physical teams. And you just hadn't seen that with Clemson over the last 45 years, especially when they're playing at Death Valley, where their defense is getting pushed around. So that you saw that early warning sign there. Carmine?
Yeah, no, you're right, Rick, because I just a quick point, because, yeah, Syracuse was crazy, and then how bad does that Syracuse loss look now that Notre Dame rolled over them 70-7? And good thing Tegan Brown isn't here to try and defend her orange, because that would be undefensible. They got turned into orange juice by Notre Dame. But Duke, down to the last minute, that was a terrible loss. Georgia Tech on the field goal, that was a tough one. And then the LSU was somewhat down to the last play as well. So you could be closer to a 10-win season, but you're sitting at 6 right now, Rick.
Yeah, and let's take a look at the Gamecock slate real quickly. And you see the Vanderbilt loss. That was very telling. Then you lose at Missouri, you beat Kentucky, and then those 5 straight games against ranked opponents. But you look at how South Carolina started the game. They beat Virginia Tech. They didn't look very crisp. SC State played them close for a while. So we saw the early warning signs that, hey, this season for both teams probably wasn't going to turn out the way we expected. All right, we're going to take our final timeout. We'll be back to wrap up the show.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. Before we get out of here, we're going to make our first picks of the week on who's going to win the Palmetto Bowl. Start with Rick. Who you got, Clemson or South Carolina?
I'm going to take South Carolina. Defensive struggle, 17-14. Carmine.
I'm going to take Clemson 20-14. I think Nick Harbor and Sellers connect on a couple deep balls, but I think Clemson is able to score enough to win.
Clemson 19-7, just for a ridiculous score. So that's 2 of us picking Clemson, 1 picking South Carolina. That might change over the course of the week. That's going to wrap it up for today's Palmetto Sports Daily. We will see you back here tomorrow.